Index funds are one of the most common starting points for new investors, largely because they're fairly straightforward. Instead of researching individual companies and deciding which shares to buy, you can buy one fund that follows multiple shares at once. But that simplicity also means investors often miss critical details. Before you put any money into an index fund, you need to understand what the fund tracks, how its holdings are weighted, and what it costs to own. Sounds intimidating? No need to worry. My name is Guy and this is The Bureau, and over the last few years we've helped over 3 million people cut through the noise around money and markets. And today I'll walk you through 10 things you need to know about index funds so that you're not going in blind. Now, before you invest in an index fund, the first thing you need to know is, well, what an index fund actually is. To do that, you first need to know the difference between an index and an index fund. Essentially, an index is a list of investments chosen using a set of rules. You can think of it as a list of companies with your investment spread across them. Notably though, you're not buying that list directly. The S&P 500 is one of the best known examples. It tracks 500 leading US companies and covers roughly 80% of the US stock market's total value. That's also why people often use the S&P 500 as a proxy for the stock market itself. When people say the S&P 500 rose or fell today, they're describing what happened to that group of 500 companies, and by extension, the broader stock market. Conversely, an index fund is an investment vehicle that basically copies one of these lists. So, a fund linked to the S&P 500 buys shares in the companies included in that index. Some funds buy every company on the list, while others buy only a carefully selected few, aiming to produce a similar result. If the index changes, the fund normally updates its holdings to keep them aligned. And when you put money into an index fund, your money is combined with a pool of money from other investors. The fund then uses that pool to invest in the shares of the companies in the index it tracks. In return, you own a portion of the fund relative to the amount you invested. This lets you invest in large collections of companies at once without having to research each one or go through the hassle of buying every stock individually. And if the fund's value changes or it receives any dividend payments, those are shared according to how much of the fund each investor owns. Okay, now the second thing you need to know is that index funds are not the same as ETFs. Beginners often hear the two terms together, but they describe different parts of an investment. The term index fund tells you how the fund chooses what to own. It simply follows an index instead of asking an asset manager to select companies based on their own judgment. By contrast, ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund, which tells you how the fund is bought and sold. ETF shares trade on a stock exchange, much like shares in an individual company, and their prices can move throughout the day while the market is open. Exchange refers to the marketplace where these trades happen. It makes sense backwards, a fund that is literally traded on an exchange. And here's where things get a little confusing, so bear with me. Many ETFs are also index funds. An ETF that follows the S&P 500 fits both descriptions because it trades on an exchange and tracks an index. Other ETFs, though, are actively managed, meaning a manager decides which shares the fund should buy. These ETFs do not have to follow an index. And to make things a little more confusing, this is as complicated as it gets though, I promise, index funds can also be mutual funds. Now, mutual funds are usually bought or sold at a price calculated after the market closes, whereas ETFs trade throughout the day. For beginners, the easiest approach is to check both the fund type and the index it follows before investing. Two funds can follow the same index but use completely different structures. Now, the third thing you need to know about index funds is that you're buying many companies at once. A stock is a small ownership stake in a company. When you buy one, your investment depends on how that business performs. Strong sales may lift the share price, while a failed product, heavy debt, poor management, or another serious problem can cause it to fall. That is a lot of risk tied to one set of managerial decisions. An index fund spreads your money across many companies, helping you to diversify. If one performs badly, it affects only part of your investment. One failure has a much smaller impact on your overall result. Notably, though, this doesn't remove risk entirely, since many companies can fall together. In any case, how much diversification you get depends on the index your fund tracks. Remember, the S&P 500 contains 500 leading US companies. A total US stock market fund can hold several thousand companies, including smaller businesses, while a global fund can spread its holdings across markets worldwide. If you're unsure what you're buying, then the fund's information page should list its current holdings. Anyway, this convenience is one of the biggest reasons people use index funds. Building a portfolio of hundreds of stocks yourself takes a lot of time, not to mention money. One broad fund, however, can give you small stakes in all its holdings with a single purchase, made in just a few clicks. These things are designed to make the investment process easier. And by the way, there's something else designed to make your investment journey easier: the Money Bureau newsletter. That's where we break down all manner of investing concepts and finance topics to help educate you on your financial journey. Just click the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. And the fourth thing you need to know about index funds is that they aren't always weighed evenly across every company. Many indexes give larger companies a larger share of the fund. This is called market capitalization weighting, which is admittedly a bit of a mouthful. Market capitalization, aka market cap, is the total stock market value of all a company's shares. Under this system, companies with a higher market cap receive a larger weight, meaning they make up a bigger percentage of the fund. For example, imagine one company is worth 10 times more than another. In a market cap weighted index, the larger company receives a bigger share of the portfolio, so a rise or fall in its share price has a greater impact on the fund's overall performance. However, this doesn't automatically mean its weighting is 10 times higher. Instead, the index applies its own rules to determine each company's weight. This is important, though, because a small group of large businesses can control a large portion of the index. For perspective, S&P Dow Jones Indices reported that the 10 biggest companies made up almost 40% of the S&P 500 in mid-2025. Naturally, their performance had an outsized influence on the index. And not only that, but the fund's weightings can change as each company rises and falls in value. So, before buying a fund, check its largest holdings and the percentage assigned to each. A long list of companies can still be heavily concentrated near the top. Okay, the fifth thing you need to know about index funds is that different ones can focus on different things. An index might track large US companies, businesses in foreign countries, smaller firms, bonds, or one narrow part of the economy. Remember, index fund describes a broad category, not one specific investment. An S&P 500 fund mainly gives you exposure to large US companies, while a fund tracking the MSCI ACWI has a broader global focus. And for anyone wondering what that random bunch of letters stands for, it's the Morgan Stanley Capital International All-Country World Index. Try saying that after a few drinks. Anyway, that index includes large and medium-sized companies from developed and emerging markets, covering roughly 85% of the world's investable share market. It therefore spreads money across far more countries than an S&P 500 fund. A Nasdaq 100 fund is another example. It follows 100 of the largest non-financial companies listed on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange and often has substantial exposure to tech. This makes it different from a broad US or global market fund. It also excludes financial companies, changing the mix even further. Again, read the index's name and check what the fund actually owns. Look at its biggest companies, the countries included, and the kinds of businesses it focuses on. And of course, check the fund's weighting method, since this determines how much influence each holding has. And now this ties into the sixth thing you need to know about index funds: their values can fall sharply. Diversification can reduce the harm caused by one company having a terrible year, but it can't prevent losses when most of the stock market falls all at once. During a major economic shock, investors often sell shares across many industries, causing hundreds of companies to lose value together. A stock index fund rises and falls with the stocks it holds. But it's easy to forget that it's an investment and not a savings account, so its value is never guaranteed. If the whole market drops by 20%, a fund tracking it will fall by a similar amount, before fees and tracking differences. We should note, though, that small differences can exist between a fund and its index. A great example was the 2008 financial crisis, when the S&P 500 lost 37%. Anyone who invested, say, $10,000 at the start of the year would have suffered huge losses by year-end, even though the fund held shares in hundreds of companies. Diversification, in this case, wasn't enough to protect investors. Now, of course, selling during a crash turns a temporary drop into a permanent loss. Broad index funds can still be useful long-term investments, but beginners should expect volatile periods when their value falls significantly. That is just part of the game. Okay, the seventh thing you need to know about index funds is that running one costs money. The company managing it must maintain the portfolio, process transactions, prepare reports, and handle related admin. These costs are passed on to investors through fees. That's why one of the most useful things to check is the fund's expense ratio, the annual fee charged while you remain invested. Essentially, the expense ratio shows the fund's yearly operating costs as a percentage of the money invested. An expense ratio of 0.2% works out to roughly $20 a year for every $10,000 in the fund. Now, you usually won't receive a bill because the cost is taken from the fund's assets. In other words, you only notice it through a slightly lower return. At first, that small percentage can seem negligible. Over time, though, it leaves less money in your account to earn future returns. An SEC example sums it up best. $100,000 growing at 4% annually becomes about $208,000 after 20 years with a 0.25% fee, but only about $179,000 with a 1% fee. That fee suddenly isn't so negligible when it costs you nearly 30 grand. Index funds often charge less than actively managed funds because they follow set rules and usually require less research. That said, though, some are still relatively expensive. Compare the expense ratios of funds offering similar exposure, along with any trading costs or account fees. The cheapest fund isn't always suitable, so check what each one actually owns. Right, the eighth thing you need to know about index funds is that strong performance doesn't guarantee strong future performance. A chart might show that a fund generated solid returns over the past year or so, making it easy for beginners to assume the highest returning fund is the best choice. But that success may have depended on conditions that no longer apply. In other words, this year's top-performing funds may not be next year's winners. A sector can become popular, rise quickly, and then struggle further down the line. Buying just because prices have gone up is investing purely on FOMO, and more often than not, this results in entering a position long after most of the action has already happened. That said, past results can still be useful used for the right purpose. They can show how much the fund's value has moved and how it behaved during a market downturn. Zooming out to a longer time frame can also reveal whether the fund has stayed close to its index, along with risks hidden by a recent price rally. So, before throwing your hard-earned cash at a fund, check what it owns, how much it costs, the risks involved, and how well it fits your goal. Treat past performance as background information and always remember it does not guarantee future returns. An investment that performs brilliantly one year can disappoint the next. Now, the ninth thing to know about index funds is how important your investing timeline is. Also known as your time horizon, it's simply how long you expect to invest before needing the money. But why does this matter? Well, money invested for retirement in 30 years has a very different timeline from money needed for rent, tuition, an emergency bill, or a home deposit next year. Your time horizon affects how much risk it makes sense to take in order to reach your goals. Stock prices can fall suddenly and take a long time to recover. A longer time horizon therefore gives you more flexibility to remain invested when markets fall. It doesn't guarantee a future profit, but it does reduce the chance that you'll be forced to sell immediately after a large drop. The thing is, though, nobody knows how long the next decline will last, so do keep that in mind. It's no good locking money in an index fund if you may need the cash sooner rather than later. Life has a habit of throwing unexpected curveballs our way, which is why it's always wise to keep some emergency cash handy. The goal is to have enough available for unexpected bills so they don't wipe you out. That's why, before choosing an index fund, you should decide when you might need the money and how much of a temporary loss you can realistically handle. A fund can be well designed and low cost, but still unsuitable for a goal only a few months away. Its suitability ultimately depends on what you need the money for. And this relates to the 10th thing you need to know about index funds. Consistency matters more than perfect timing. Many people delay investing while waiting for the perfect moment, hoping to buy just before prices skyrocket and avoid every drop. While possible, doing this consistently requires predicting short-term market movements, which are difficult to know in advance. Even professional investors regularly get them wrong. A more practical approach for many beginners is to invest a set amount on a regular schedule. This is called dollar cost averaging, or DCA. So, for example, you might invest $100 every payday, whether the market is rising or falling. Automating your investments makes this strategy much easier. By contributing the same amount regularly, you effectively average out your entry point. However, this isn't foolproof. Regular investing doesn't guarantee a profit or protect you from market downturns. What it does do, though, is create a routine that removes the need to predict each purchase. And believe it or not, investing part of each paycheck can be more effective than keeping a lump sum aside while waiting for the right moment. Until you invest, that money sits idle, potentially reducing your overall returns. Time spent out of the market can cost you heavily in future compound returns. As the popular investment saying goes, time in the market beats timing the market. And well, there you have it, folks. 10 things you need to know about index funds. And if you want more detail on exactly how to start investing, then you should check out our video right over here. And if you want to learn about the difference between growth stocks and dividend stocks, then consider checking out this video right here. Okay, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. This is Guy, signing off.